Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, or evening, or wherever you are. This is another episode in my English podcast on simply talking about A Course in Miracles and spirituality in general in a way that can be applied to our daily life. And I say English podcast because most of my work throughout the years with A Course in Miracles and spirituality in general has been in Spanish. I have another podcast that has over 100 episodes on it that have been recorded throughout the years, and many of the events I've done around the world have been in Spanish. And recently, although along those same years, I have published some content in English, I haven't done it as much as I have done content in Spanish. So it's sort of a new thing again, this English podcast. I think I was really, really active until 2019. And then sort of drifted to just doing Spanish ones. But recently I've really felt this sense of being propelled to sharing a lot more in English about what my journey has been with the course and how I integrate these concepts into my daily life. From the previous podcast, which I did with my husband, and it was a very, very sweet podcast because he practices A Course in Miracles as well, which, by the way, if you don't know what it is, it's a spiritual mind training that its purpose is for you to reconnect with your higher teacher and basically reawaken to love in your life through the process of forgiveness. And I encourage you to look more into it because a lot of the concepts that I talk about in this podcast will become clearer to you, although I am sure you can also get benefits from it, even if you don't. But yes, it was a very lovely podcast. We spoke about our relationship and how our spiritual transformation heavily has circled around not only our own personal relationship, but relationships that we have had with other people, and how we have seen our ego dynamics transpire in those relationships and have had the opportunity to forgive them at the same time and see a whole different version of ourselves that we didn't even know of, and consequently experience the release of those layers of ego coming off. So today, I am here by myself, and I really, really wanted to record this podcast on time. I feel like lately, and in my own personal case, I feel like I have been allowing myself to get a little suffocated with time and not having enough time to do everything that I need to do. And I was actually sharing this with my husband over breakfast the other day, and I wanted to talk about it at large and see how the ego plays in this. So for me, one of the primary reasons why I love A Course in Miracles and why it's been my spiritual paths for over, what is it, so 14, yeah, almost 16 years now. It's because it is so clear about the ego dynamics in our lives and how the ego acts and its theory behind that is hidden in our unconscious. And basically, the ego has a theory for everything. So for me, the way I get out of my own mental traps is I start looking at putting my emotions aside and putting how I'm reasoning the situation out. I really try to look at, okay, what are the ego dynamics in play in regards to how I am feeling about this particular situation. And it's been really, really clear to me when I look at like my stress regarding time. And just to give you a little bit of background, I right now I am running two businesses. I'm an interior designer, and I that's my main profession. I'm also now launching a food business with a business friend, business partner, amazing women that also shares the same interests in healthy lifestyle that I've had for many years, and we decided to act on that and do something with it. I am also a translator on different platforms for classes on A Course in Miracles, and I am a wife. I deal a lot with our financial planning and yeah, just all the day ins and the day out of home ownership and taxes and all of that stuff. We also we're planning something very, very special for next year on a family level, and that's taken a great deal of planning. I also just came out of a 5-month post-surgery recovery, so I've had a lot of work backed up from all these months that I couldn't really do a whole lot. Yeah, we're also trying to purchase a property, etc. So endless things. And I feel like, from a very early age, I've always been ushered to, yes, you can do more, you're so intelligent, like just a very achiever mentality. And granted, yes, I have achieved a lot of things, and I am very well versed in a lot of things and highly productive in a lot of areas. But when is too much too much? And how do we find that balance of being effective in the world, but at the same time having quality of life and being able to enjoy our present, right? One of the things that sort of dawned on me on a very transcendental experience level while I was going through my surgery recovery was this idea that I was like, oh my God, I don't want to continue running on this rat race. And what I meant by that was not that I wanted to stop things, all my external pursuits, but on a very deep level, I realized that I wanted to go about this in peace and not sacrifice myself and not think that my worth was only based on the things that I could achieve, right? And that first and foremost, that what I really wanted was quality of life, and that meant that I would have to shift a big part of my attention from work to relationships in my life and building and continuing to build those connections, because that ultimately is what gave me the most joy. But then again, the old mindset of do creeps in, and now as I revisit the days and I evaluate how I felt and what I thought, it was like, okay, well, this is starting to creep back in and you really need to be mindful. So I think this podcast is really helpful to me to do it and to share, what are those ego dynamics that play, and why is it that we just tend to go into this rat race over and over again, not being able to enjoy what's happening right now, always thinking that, okay, I will feel better when I finish this project or when I finish this task. And why it doesn't have to be that way, things that we can do to kind of reframe our minds about it. And yeah, so I hope this is helpful to you. It's certainly being helpful to me already. And I'm really excited to actually be here recording something because it feels very private in the sense that I am pre-recording this and then, I'm going to put a title and a description to it. But it's like you get my freshest thoughts as opposed to when I do like programmed live classes where there's a lot more planning involved and there's an audience there. So it feels a little more exposed. This is kind of like me writing to my diary, and you get to benefit in. So let's do this. So the way the Course explains the concept of time, the Course tells us that we have this ontological belief in sin, right? We believe that we are guilty over separating ourselves from God. And we think that although God is all powerful, almighty, that we were actually able to pull off the impossible and separate from Him. And the fact that we actually think we did this on an ontological deep level that we're not consciously aware of, it tells us, and we believe it 100%, that we are sinful. We committed this sin. So our present unconscious experience is one of guilt, and a lot of times we kind of get in touch with that experience of guilt, but we quickly try to cover it. But it's there, and it is something that the ego just will, does not let us let go of. And so this present experience of guilt, the projection of this onto a dualistic world means that we need a span of something in which we will be punished for that sin. So that is where we have the creation of time. Time is this thing in which we will kind of pay for our sin, right? Now, what does all this have to do with God? Absolutely nothing. The Course tells us that the moment that we thought we were split off from God, we started dreaming a dream in which all these impossible things, alien to love, could actually happen. And so if you look at it from that point, right, that time is this thing in which we pay for our sin, in which we are punished. And this is a belief that is in us as a collective unconscious. And right there is a hint of, oh, okay, so no wonder it's very easy for me to go into this mentality or this perception that time is against me, right? And why I'm always trying to get more time, right? Because I believe that at some point I will atone for my sin throughout being punished in time, right? And it's really crazy because sometimes we cannot explain why we are in this constant rat race, right? It's something like it's just there, and it's part of the impulsiveness of who we are, the impulsivity. I don't know how to say that. And it's almost as there is something behind us pushing us to go faster in time, to get somewhere, and we futurize ourselves, and we experience the relief of seeing ourselves having completed X, Y, and Z, right? But then guess what? We get there And it's like, oh my God, I still experience the same feeling of the rat race. So for me, thinking back on the purpose that the ego has of time, which is, again, the ego wants us to believe that time is our escape from sin. But the trick is that because in reality, sin is not real, no matter how much we atone for it, and it's not real because it's not part of God, no matter how much we atone for it, quote unquote, we're never going to be able to be released from this concept of guilt or sin, because it's actually a concept that we are holding on to. So the Course tells us that God doesn't hold any grudges, any condemnation for anything that we have done, because he does not understand duality. He only understands oneness. But it is us who hold on to that belief of sin and guilt because we like the sense of individuality that it gives us. And this is a very sophisticated psychological concept that the Course brings about, and it's pretty radical in this teaching. Not a lot of other spiritualities actually share this with the Course, but what it says is we rather accept the guilt and we rather accept this idea of sin than give up the individuality that we think separating from God has given us. And we continue on this path of anxiety and trying to atone for our guilt, trying to atone for this unconscious guilt that we experience, because it perpetuates the idea that we are someone. So it's almost like, well, then what is the hope? What is the solution here? And in my experience, whenever I find myself taking a pause from this rat race, right, and recognizing this is where I am and it's not giving me happiness, I take a breath and I remember, well, in God's reality, I have everything right now. I am complete, right? I'm not even a body that needs to achieve all these things. And I try to remember that awareness, right? Mind you, I have been doing this for a very, very long time. So for me, that idea is not what one might call like, oh, that's just a spiritual bypass move. No, for me, it's recalling an experience that's very, very real to me, of reminding myself of truth. And then I also remember, right, the ego dynamic that is at play. It's like, well, of course, the ego is always going to tell me that there is something else to do, that there is something more to do, and that I cannot be happy unless I get there, right? That is an ego premise that is like 101 to remember, that the ego always tells you, well, the next one will do. Right around the corner, there is the one thing that you're still looking for. Oh, wait, no, it was right around the other corner. And seek, but do not find. That is the premise. Say, seek and do not find. And if we look at our experience of time, we see how well that explanation or that premise plays itself out, because we're always thinking, I am out of time, I do not have enough time. And even if I did, the anxiety is still there, right? And for me, and this is where my total faith for this path and the relationship that I have developed over the years with my own inner teacher, which for me sometimes it's either Jesus or the Holy Spirit, where part of the practice of forgiveness in A Course in Miracles is realizing that in any moment that you feel distress, right, is because you have believed in the reality of guilt. And so I close my eyes and I say, okay, this anxiety, this stress that I'm feeling is not in any way related to what is going on outside in the deadlines that I have to meet, blah, blah, blah. It's because right now I have chosen guilt on an unconscious level, and now I am running away from love. So, love, which is that completes me, that fills me, that is truly what I am. Right now, I am running away from it, and I am projecting uh, this fear of my guilt onto the world, right? So now I think that it's because I haven't completed this deadline, because I haven't sent my client this email, because I haven't paid X and X bill, that is why I am unhappy. So, Holy Spirit, please, I take my darkness to you. I take my unconscious decision for guilt because I may not even be aware of it, right? But understanding the ego dynamics helps me realize what's going on in the background that I'm not seeing. So I give you this decision for guilt that I have made on some level, and I ask for you to look at it with me and remind myself that just like I had the power to choose that guilt, I also have the power to let it go. And I get very quiet and I allow myself to feel that presence of something higher than myself, of my right mind, of a presence of, that it can be many things for you in your own experience. But I allow that presence to remind me of the power that I really have, that I am not a victim to the circumstances, that I'm not a victim that has no choice but to feel the way that I am feeling right now. That I can, in fact, let go of this guilt. And in a moment, something very miraculous happens, which is the whole point of A Course in Miracles. It's called A Course in Miracles because what a miracle is a moment out of time when you join with your higher power and you choose, or better said, the fear you had chosen gets transformed into love. It's a shift in perception from fear to love. And it acts so deeply that it reaches the core of something that is very, very profound in the unconscious. And as you release the grip you have on guilt, you release the concept of being a body. And for a moment, briefly, you experience going back to source or joining with love in a way that you just cannot explain with words. And it only takes 1 second. You don't work at it any further than that, except to remembering that you have the power to let it go. And then it's as though that higher power, which is really you, comes to be present, to take presence. in that moment. And whenever I do that and then I come back, my experience, my perception of the situation completely changes. Completely changes. And there's this peace, right? Which now my love towards myself, my self-worth is not tied to what I have accomplished in time. I realize that I still have things to do, but then the anxiety is gone. And I'm able to reasonably say, okay, I am going to do this, I am going to do that with the time that I have left. And that is so freeing. It is so freeing. Let me read you. This is a quote from the Course about time. And it says, time and eternity are both in your mind and will conflict until you perceive time solely as a means to regain eternity. Time and eternity are both in your mind and will conflict until you perceive time solely as a means to regain eternity. So the Course and many other spiritualities, what do they want? They want us to awaken, to go back to source, to heal, right? And from a right-minded, from a Holy Spirit, higher teacher, Jesus perspective, time is the span of something where that happens. So in their mind, time is actually our friend. When we take the side of the ego, time is actually our enemy, because it's the span of time where we are punished for our sin that will never end because we're the ones that do not want to let it go. And I understand that if this is the first time you're ever hearing this, it's a chunk to swallow, and I just ask you for your trust in this, because what I am going to continue to saying, you can still see and perceive for yourself, even without having a great comprehension of these concepts. But if we allow ourselves, if we have the willingness to, let's say, what if I can look at time differently? What if instead of thinking that the purpose of time is for me to achieve and to add all these little wins, which I think my own self-identity would be empty without, if I now shift the purpose of time to one in which I heal and in which I use the experiences of my life to bring me back to the reality of what I am. What if I shift my mind in this? And when the Course, or whatever spirituality you practice, when it tells us that the purpose of time is for us to heal, it's not necessarily saying that now all you're going to do is practice forgiveness sitting on your couch all day, or all you're going to do is go to church and say 10 rosaries, or, it's not about the ritual that, it's not about doing a ritual or performing a specific activity. It's about having the mindset of using whatever is in our world with the purpose of healing our mind. Of, in any moment that we feel fear, of using that time to undo the fear, to choose in favor of love instead of that fear. And allowing the interactions that we have with other people as a means of not of emphasizing the differences or how I am better to this person or how I'm gonna get over on this person or how this person um, might attack me, etc. But how can I reframe that situation through a simple mindset change where I know, or I try to remember as best as I can, that in this experience there's an opportunity for me to heal my mind. And I guarantee you, because I've experienced this myself, that the quality of life that you experience with a mindset change like that is ginormous, is so ginormous, because you start being a hell of a lot more present. And you actually start living. You know, one of the things that are so subtly deadly is that we go through life, mind you, achieving all these things, but we're not living. We're not present. We're not taking a moment to embrace whoever is there. We are not present to smell, to breathe, to rejoice. We're just one step after the next, one step after the next. What's the next thing that needs to be done? And if you think about it, okay, you can look extremely successful on the outside and have been extremely productive, but on the inside, you're dead. And for me, which I consider myself one of those highly effective people, I ask myself, okay, well, that's all well and good, but do I want to spend the rest of my life dead? Like, constantly running from this guilt instead of constantly attempting to let it go as best as I possibly can with a higher help? And wow, that's very deep. Because for some of us, we may realize, wow, I've spent years in that. And if you're hearing this, well, like, feel your heart cleansed, because the fact that you're hearing this is just a representation of your own desire not to do that anymore. So we can shift the purpose of time from an ego-based pursuit of achieving, of just building more onto our identity, to a purpose of healing, of using time to go back home. And really, this does not take anything away from your desire to achieve things. It may realign them, I will say that, or it may slow them down a little bit in favor of something that's actually to your greater benefit, and you will see that. But I'm really grateful for having the experience, right, of being on one side and then experiencing what it is to be on the other side. There is this other quote that says, "The purpose of time is to enable you to learn how to use time constructively." The purpose of time is to enable you to learn how to use time constructively. So, we can see it in our lives. When do I use time not constructively? Destructively, when I use time to hurt my body, or when I use time to plot against other people or have all these judgmental thoughts. So we are given this time on earth to learn how to use time constructively in a way that realigns us with right-mindedness. And I think this is the last quote that I'm gonna share with you because I want these podcasts to be it not extensively time consuming, but something that you can actually use and feel refreshed by. And it's like, okay, let me keep going with a different mindset. But this next quote that I'm going to read allows you to see a little bit of the beyond form realm that this Course in Miracles opens you to. Because it says this: the miracle is the only device at your immediate disposal for controlling time. I'm going to read that again. The miracle is the only device at your immediate disposal for controlling time. So, we talked about what a miracle is, right? It's changing your mind through asking for guidance, asking for higher help. You can never do this alone because that would be the ego doing it with itself, and the ego only wants your destruction. Of shifting from a fear perspective to a love perspective by letting go of guilt. So, we wish, right? We were the masters of time and we could add hours to our days and years to our lives. Well, this is telling us the miracle is the only device at your immediate disposal for controlling time. And why is this? Because time is a relative concept. If we look at science and we look at the relativity concept about time from Albert Einstein, time is relative. Time is based on your perception. So if you're living in guilt, time is gonna be like a bomb. It's gonna go off at some point, and you need to run as fast as you can to turn that bomb off. But if you're living from a mindset of the release of guilt and constantly turning over your darkness to higher guidance and looking at it and being willing to let it go, you are in fact performing miracles. And this is insane, right? Because it's a very different understanding of what a miracle is from conventional Christianity, from conventional religion. It's not some magical act that gets performed by only some people. It's something that each and every one of us can do simply by shifting their mindset from fear to love, or opening your mind to be willing to step from fear to love, of realizing that you are holding on to fear so badly, but it doesn't have to be that way, that in you is the power to change your mindset. And when you do that, you do control time because your perception will change. And it goes on to saying, the miracle thus has the unique property of abolishing time to the extent that it renders the interval of time it spans unnecessarily. So the time that it would have taken you to continue atoning for a perceived sin or guilt in the past, because now you have turned yourself over to love, you don't have to experience that. So more time gets added, a new sequence of time gets lived, and that is how you control time. Not by directly controlling time, but simply by changing your perception in this moment of the situation that you're in. I hope that you're seeing how amazing this is, as I am. I am going to leave you with this very last quote, and this is one of those keys for when you're in trouble. When anything threatens your peace of mind, ask yourself, has God changed his mind about me? Then accept his decision, for it is indeed changeless, and refuse to change your mind about yourself. So, are you any less because you haven't been able to accomplish this or that? No. Will you be more or even more when you achieve this or that? No, because you already are everything. So if you're doing it, do it for the love of it, for the extension of it, because you realize that you're continuing to heal. But do not allow the concept of time to circumvent your peace. God will never decide against you, or he would be deciding against himself. I send you all of my love. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next podcast.